Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the RSL Sunset Service. My name is Phil Orchard and I am the Chief Executive Officer of RSL WA. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving and the families that have supported them. Our wreath layers this evening are Diane Woodward. She will lay a wreath for her great uncle, John H. Waters, who died in World War I and is buried at Messines Ridge, Belgium. May Tomich will lay a wreath for her grandfather, Hubert Peter Damison, and his cousin Cyril Damison. Hubert was captured at Balcourt, was a prisoner of war during World War I, and died in Germany at the end of the war. Ross Lovelady, great-grandson of Corporal James Burnett Craig, 48th Battalion B Company, 12th Brigade. And we'll hear a bit more about Corporal Craig very shortly. Jenny Warren will lay a wreath for her father, who was a member of the 458ers. Jenny's father died 6 years ago, and she has continued to lay a wreath annually on behalf of the remaining but ageing 458ers. Peter Stone and his daughter Rosie will lay a wreath in memory of Private Lawrence Ralph Stone, who served in the 28th Battalion during the First World War. He was killed in action on the 30th of December 1917 in Belgium at the age of 24. If anyone else present wishes to lay a wreath or a floral tribute, you are very welcome to do so after the official party. I ask you now to please stand and join in the singing of the National Anthem. We are fortunate to have Madeleine Shaw with us today, who will lead the singing as the National Anthem is played. Thank you, Madeleine. Please be seated. The State War Memorial was designed by the Honorary Architect, Lieutenant General Sir J. Talbot Hobbs, and since its dedication in 1929, the State War Memorial has been entrusted to the State Branch of the Returned and Services League. The internal walls of the Undercroft list the names of more than 7,000 members of the services killed in action or who died of wounds or illness in World War I and post-World War II. The bronze plaques on the outside walls of the Undercroft list the names of nearly 4,000 West Australians who lost their lives in World War II. This court of contemplation commemorates conflicts in which Western Australians have fallen, with the walls featuring the names of major battlefields. The flame of remembrance within the pool of reflection was inaugurated by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on the 1st of April 2000 and burns continuously. It symbolises the promise of all West Australians. We will remember them. This evening we will read a story behind one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists more than 11,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations over more than a century. Lieutenant Commander Claire O'Brien, RAN, based at HMS Stirling, will tell us a little bit about Corporal James Burnett Craig of the 48th Battalion B Company, 12th Brigade. Your piper this evening is Davina Goldcook, who will play a traditional lament as the wreaths are laid. Our bugler tonight is Corporal David Scott. There will be 4 bugle calls throughout the rest of the service. Bugle calls are extremely important in the days before radios and loudspeaker systems relayed orders to the troops. The first we will hear tonight will be the very short call, Stand Fast. the purpose of this call being to gain everybody's attention. During the ode, you will hear the familiar last post. At the end of the silence, the bugle will then play retreat. This is a signal for the end of the day's activities, and it will be followed by the short continue to allow troops to carry on. The flags will be lowered following the retreat, and the sub-wardens will dismount their posts. The wreaths will now be laid. That completes the official reflang. If anybody would like to come forward with a further floral tribute, please do so now. I would now like to introduce Lieutenant Commander Claire O'Brien, RAN, to read Corporal Craig's story. When Claire has finished, I invite you all to stand when she will then recite the ode.
service number 4780, Corporal James Burnett, grade, 48th Battalion, B Company, 12th Brigade. James Jim Craig was born in Perth, Scotland, on the 19th of December 1868. He was the son of David and Anna Mary Blake, near Geelong, whose family had a very long military history in the Indian Army. In 1895, aged 27, Jim qualified in mechanical engineering after an apprenticeship at Hawthorne & Co, Leith, Scotland. After some extended travels to Europe and the US, he came to Kalgoorlie, WA, in 1907 and was the manager of Golden Zone Gold Mine. At the Presbyterian Manse, Kalgoorlie, on the 29th of May 1909, he married South Australian-born Hilda Dagmar Thornton, 21. 2 children were born over the next 2 years, Mabel Beatrice in July 1910 and James Frederick in December 1911. Jim enlisted on 7th of December 1915. He'd have been rejected if he gave his actual age of almost 47, so he lied on his enlistment papers and said he was 42. Assigned to the 16th Battalion, he embarked at Fremantle and arrived in Alexandria on the 26th of April 1916. They then went to Mina Camp outside Cairo for intensive training. The camp was in the shadow of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, and the pyramid itself was used extensively in field exercises. The following month, he was reassigned to the newly formed 48th Battalion. Commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Ray Lean and with several Lean family members in its ranks, it quickly became known as Lean's Battalion. On the 7th of June 1916, he embarked at Alexandria for Marseille, arriving on the 18th of July 1916. Back in Kalgoorlie, Hilda wrote to tell him of his third child. Their second son, Neville Claude Burnett, was safely born. The 48th marched in as reinforcements to the already several months old Battle of the Somme. They entered the fighting at Pozieres, and later the nightmare continued as they moved to defend ground captured at Mouquet Farm. The Battle of the Somme saw more Allied losses than at any other time in any other war, and no battalion suffered heavier casualties than the 48th. Under the heaviest bombardment experienced by Australian troops, the 48th dug the trenches that formed the front line, only feet away from those of the retreating enemy. Distressingly, the bodies of enemy soldiers often slid from the sides of the newly dunked trenches. Towards winter, it rained for weeks on end. The trenches filled with mud and caused enormous suffering with trench foot. During these months, Jim was promoted to the temporary rank of Corporal and received the welcome news of Neville's birth and a photo. An excerpt from a letter he wrote back to Hilda during the appalling exercise reads, "Somewhere in France, 7th of November 1916. Dear Hilda, just a line or two to let you know that I'm all right. I haven't had a letter from you for a long time now. I often wonder how you're getting on. It's miserable weather here now, nothing but rain and mud. We are camped in an old broken down barn and the rain is coming down through the roof. I'm writing this in bed with my water sheet over me. It's the worst billet we've had yet. We will be going in the trenches again in a few days. I've not been touched so far, and perhaps I will have the same luck again and come through all right. But if I don't, you must try and do the best you can for yourself and the kiddies, like thousands of wives have to do in France and Australia. I'm not sorry I came. I would never have been happy if I had stayed at home, and I'm sure I would have got impossible to live with. So it's all for the best, and the little I have done will perhaps make up for all my faults. And Jim will be able to say that his daddy fought and died for his country, and you will try and forget all my shortcomings. And remember only that I loved you and tried to do my best." 8th of the 11th, 1916. I just received your nice long letter and the photo of the baby. He's a bonzer. I would like to see him and you again, but I'll hope for the best. I'm sending you and the kiddies some cards. They're not much, but they're the best that you can get here. I haven't got the parcel yet, but it will come along. I often envy the chaps when they get their parcels. The 3 corporals in my platoon are all good fellows, and we stick together and share everything we get, and some of them get good parcels. I'm writing this while I'm waiting for my boots to get mended. I've still got the pair I was issued with at Black Boy Hill. They've lasted well. The rain has stopped for the present. I hope it will keep fine, as the mud will be something awful. It will be worse than Mukay Farm, and that was bad enough. My words have come true about conscription in Australia. Every man will be needed to finish this war. I will now finish with fondest love to you and the kiddies. Your loving husband, Jim. At Fleurs on the 16th of November 1916, the 48th Battalion War Diary reports the enemy shelled our position again today, using both gas and high explosive. 4 men wounded, 1 man evacuated suffering from gas. That day, 9 days after writing the letter and seeing the photograph of his newborn son Neville, Jim was shot in his right leg. He was transferred to the Healy railway station, commandeered as the 38th Casualty Clearing Station. But there were so many casualties, only a small percentage were able to receive medical attention. He died the following day. Too soon for infection to have set in, it is possible he simply bled to death. He was buried in the cemetery next to the hospital. 2 days later, the Allies won the Battle of the Somme. A few months later, Hilda paid for and received, along with the thanks of the Australian Imperial Force, a photograph of her husband's grave on the other side of the world. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Please be seated. The flags are now lowered and the sub-wardens will dismount their posts. I would like to thank the Deputy Warden, Colonel Jeff Simpson, and the Sub-Wardens for their participation in tonight's service. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this concludes our service this evening. We leave you this evening with reflecting on the words inscribed on the obelisk in front of the State War Memorial. Erected by the grateful citizens in remembrance of the men of this state who at the call of duty gave their lives for freedom and humanity in the Great War 1914-1918. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you have a pleasant evening.